All right, welcome to another accountability practice for me during the off season. Is just going over and reviewing some of the players that I would have selected in the draft and just doing a little friendly game of competition with who the Tennessee Titans actually selected. Now, I know Hopium is at an all-time high right now with the OTAs passing in the mini camp, and fans have fell in love with who the Tennessee Titans actually selected. But it's something that I've been doing for 8 years and I've been highly accurate at. So I said, hey, let's keep this accountability practice going. And as a service to the people, I mean, it gives people the opportunity to see what were the real time alternatives. Because a lot of times things happen, and then you have people who don't really have the education on the matter say, well, the Tennessee Titans could have done this. No, that player wasn't really available. Or the Tennessee Titans should have signed this player. Oh, no, you're just big name hunting. He's not what he used to be. So I released a video, I think it was last week in the last few days, about 3 hours, 30 timestamps, going through my 7,000 word game plan that I typed up back in late March, early, no, late February, early March, excuse me. And just going over some of the targets that I would have had, the strategy in which I would have attacked the season with. And one of those strategies was wanting to more so be more interested in the draft haul that you were going to get from a New York team per se. A lot of people were saying the Giants post free agency and pre draft. I was more so before free agency, pre free agency, really targeting a guy like Justin Fields on a 2 year rental, and then being able to get draft capital from a team like the Jets. Because they would be the team that would be most needy in that said position because we beat them to their guy. And also, I think that you'll probably get a higher draft pick in later drafts because the Jets are a team that's further away, in my opinion, than the Giants. So, with that being said, we're not going to make this 3 hours. We're just going to try to talk about it. I did try to go. I guess this is my version of live. You guys will get the video later, but I did try to share my screen, and we're gonna try to play videos as I go through quote unquote my draft class. And if it starts to buffer, bear with me. We will exit out of the shared screen and we'll just get back to just me just sharing and talking to you like this. So bear with me. I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully that is still up from what we previously did. Um, but like I said, everybody knows that in a stick and pick scenario that I'm going with Cam Ward. I've already, established that. I don't think that that is, too crazy to think about or too crazy to agree with or know. Um, and then the second pick of the draft for me personally was getting to Tory Horton, wide receiver out of Colorado State. So yeah, we're gonna just stick with me doing this because I think the video is gonna create some buffering issues. But yeah, just to not to shortchange the Cam Ward decision. He arrived at my quarterback one of the earliest in my market of Nashville, saying that he was quarterback one, and by default, the Tennessee Titans needing a quarterback need, that was the guy. So I know a lot of people have came up with a false claim that they were the first, but indeed I was, and I have proof. And I know that that sounds kind of petty, but I think a lot of people in our market try to give flowers and credibility to people without really knowing who really did it. And I know that's kind of a tit for tat thing, but I definitely have the proof that I was the one of, if not the first person that kind of tied those two pairings together. One of the reasons Cam Ward, keep it short and simple, you've heard it ad nauseum at this point. Also, one of the first people that was talking about the intangibles of Cam Ward off the field. Just his ability to lead, to compete, the way that he will be, self motivating. Um, and then obviously has one of the more unique arm talents that we've seen in the past, in my opinion, the dozen teams. I mean, he's the perfect prototypical quick game RPO quarterback, excellent ball placement from short to intermediate. He has, excellent improv ability, second reaction ability, and he has velocity on his throws. And I think that you know, he has some of the weaknesses that a lot of young quarterbacks have, and that's kind of the game needs to speed up for him. He has to understand that he can't always get to the perfect look or the perfect play. He has to take care of the ball better, and that's protecting it, whether it be in his hands or throwing it in harm's way across the field. Um, I think that he has an okay body and okay build. I don't think it's the best build. Um, thin lowers is something that I talk about a lot, and I've said that ad nauseum in every evaluation that's brought up about him. But I think the Tennessee Titans, even from a superficial perspective, I brought up hopium a while ago, and I think that that's something that for them that's what they need at this point. They need some type of hope. But at the end of the day, in the stick and pick scenario, I'm more of a war chest getting draft picks kind of guy. And I know Cam Ward in the past dozen of years, he's probably a top 10 quarterback talent wise. But I have done this practice enough to know that is not always what wins championships. You only get one shot when you stick and pick, and that you only get one player out of that. But when you get a draft haul of selections, then you have a unique ability to build up your team, and then it makes it less important who the savior is, quote unquote, at quarterback. But yeah, that was who I would have went with quarterback. We are in lockstep with that, as as well as I think this regime has only um, been in lockstep with me, even including free agency. I think we've only agreed upon on just Van Jefferson. I know that's not to a lot of people. That's not that much, and I'm not really trying to make you know parallel moves with the Titans anyway. I try to do my own thing because I have enough empirical data and experience on building teams enough to not want to copy a team that's been 9-25 um, in consecutive years combined. So um, the next draft pick I went with a Tory Horton, and I think a lot of people may see that as a reach, seeing as though he was taken about what 100 picks, 111. I said 111 last time. That was incorrect. I think it's 114. 114 picks later, he was selected by the Seahawks. I know, obviously, like, wow, holy overdraft, right? But we see this all the time, right? Sometimes guys go early that shouldn't go early. Guys go late that shouldn't go late. And I think his situation, and we finally got confirmation on the type of injury it was that he went through, was he had an LCL injury paired with a hamstring injury. And I'm not there. That's one of the disadvantages of this. I'm not in the doctor's room. I don't know the recurrent rates. I have researched it myself, which is it's not as high as ACLs based off the research that I've done. And then the hamstring is always an iffy thing. But throughout his career, he wasn't injured at all until that last year with the groin and then that injury that shut him down. But prior to that, Tory Horton is a combination of the receivers that the Tennessee Titans drafted. So I think he has the speed of Chimere Dike. He has he's about 10 pounds lighter than Ayomanor, but he has the size potential because he can add the frame. So he's around the same height as Ayomanor, about 10 pounds lighter. He's taken the challenge of gaining weight and becoming a more physical player. That's what he attempted to do his last year, and I think that he's done that. I think he came back aggressively post injury, ran in the 4.4s. Um, and he said during his training process he ran significantly faster, so closer to Chimere Dike's uh, speed. I think he provides ability as an electric returner. I think he can be your X. I think he can be your Z. I think he has slot reps. I think he's just a long, lanky Stephon Diggs type of player that I think if healthy, I don't see anything stopping him from really taking that wide receiver three spot there in Seattle and really running with it at some point in 2025. And I think that would have been, you know, a good spot for the Tennessee Titans. There's another term that I'm gonna bring to the market. I make jokes about it. It's because last year the big word that people borrowed and ran with it was proof of concept. and people on the radio took it, ran with it. And I'm not saying that I created proof of concept. I'm saying that I brought the phrase to that market to be used by everybody else, because nobody was using it until I started to use it. And here's another one, opportunity cost. So when I look at the opportunity cost of taking Tory Horton there, I look at the type of players that were available that I think is going to pan out and are of valuable at that spot. And I'm looking at, okay, who did I lose by going ahead and getting my wide receiver four in the draft? You know, I lost guys like maybe an Ashton Gelati, who's a defensive end out of Louisville, who's really a big framed edge guy that can move inside a little bit and get you pass rush, and he can stop the run. And ironically, he went to the Chiefs, and he's a player that reminds me of George Karlaftis. So they kind of got that type of guy. So that's my opportunity cost when I'm having a real time alternative in actually selecting the player. This is the information that you don't even get from your team, the Titans. You don't get from any other evaluator is who were you really thinking? How did you come to this? And one of the reasons why I came to this was I think at a premium position at wide receiver, Tory Horton would have been a great grab based off of my rankings, right? Yes, there's concern with injury, but that's what you do with every player, as you'll see who the Tennessee Titans picked with the next selection at pick 82. But then comparing who they selected, because last pick we agreed with Cam Ward, was they picked outside linebacker Femi Oladejo. So that pick in comparison to what I did, it's like, what are we valuing here? The Tennessee Titans obviously saw him during Senior Bowl, was Senior Bowl defensive MVP, crazy twitched up frame. Definitely looks the part. I think that it's a pick that we you can go back and watch the videos on this channel and even my tweets. I think is a solid player, and I think based off of what you're probably going to get at edge in this draft class, you probably want that frame to work with. Um, but then you look at the opportunity cost for the Titans, who they could have gotten and they chose not to. They could have got any allotment of the receivers. They could have got Trey Harris or Jalen Noel or my guy Tory Horton, which is I think that's an anomaly pick. But we'll see how that plays out. So they could have went with a lot of routes in a lot of directions, and they chose to go with who they went with. So, with that being said, that's who I would have picked, and time will tell with these situations. My edge situation personally, I would have attacked it very heavily in the free agency cycle. Would have been very aggressive trying to get Xavier Smith. Would have signed a guy that probably a lot of you guys are unfamiliar with in Victor Dimukeje. Uh, and I would have tried to get guys like Dennis Gardeck as depth guys and Kason Chase Kalevon Chason as excuse me as depth pieces and guys that's really in their right before their peak stage before they really take off, giving them opportunities to develop. Titans went younger and cheaper, but at the same time there's risk there because Oladejo is a former inside linebacker and raw at the position. So next I went with Wyatt Milum, offensive lineman out of West Virginia. A guy that just has a good frame, good chops at being an offensive lineman in general. I think he has position versatility playing inside, whether it be guard or center. Good base, good tenacity, high IQ. I think he's a quick learner. Had some tough reps when he went up against some really high end talent at the Senior Bowl, but rebounded better in team settings. So that what that lets me know is he's probably not a guy that's gonna just hold it down on his own, but when he's part of a unit, he can do his job at a high level. The Tennessee Titans went with Kevin Winston Jr., safety out of Penn State. Femi Oladejo was from UCLA, by the way, if I didn't mention that. But yeah, safety Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State, who is just a heat-seeking missile. He's definitely a box safety, in my opinion. He's gonna bang down there in the box. He's a work in progress as a coverage player. He has great length, kind of freakish in that regard. But then we play that game, right? The Tennessee Titans in free agency, they got a guy that's been a special teams guy in Julius Woods. Um, and and the thing is, let me make sure. I just want to make sure of one thing here. Um, Not Julius Wood. I'm thinking of the player that was already there. Xavier Woods is who the Tennessee Titans signed from Carolina. Julius Wood was actually a guy that I saw last preseason. I was like, Titans got them a good one when they picked him up late in the process. But anyway, just wanted to confirm that. So it was Xavier Woods out of they got him from Carolina, and you know, predominantly like a super special teams ace type of guy. But then he's getting an opportunity here to really step in. And then outside of that, they really didn't have any motion. And for me, I went with like John Johnson, the third, who has some ability and coverage. Um, and I also got the big fish in the free agency cycle, and that was Justin Reed from the Chiefs. Excuse me. I'm trying to make sure that I got everything under control here. Like I told you guys, I was having buffering issues, and we pay too much for internet to have buffering issues. Let's put it like that. So anyway, I went with a lot of free agent options or a couple free agent options to boost the back end of the defense. The Titans chose to go with Xavier Woods and then draft an injured Kevin Winston Jr., who we do have a confirmed ACL injury for him. He tore it, but then much like with Tory Horton, came back and ran okay. Um, uh, I think 4.51 was his time. But Tory Horton had a different injury, but Tory Horton has been on the field. Kevin Winston has not been on the field yet. I think the Titans expect him to be on the field at some point in the offseason, and we'll see how he plays from there. I think the opportunity cost for me personally with that pick in that range. I mean, at 82, you could have double dipped at another receiver. You could have I think I actually have it on my X account slash not my X, but my Twitter account of who I would have gotten in that range. And I really just, when I look back on my picks specifically, there's only a few people that I really have like, that opportunity cost feeling about. And it was Kaleb Johnson, just seeing what he could become. I know that from a scheme um, perspective, he's not necessarily a gap run scheme running back. He's a zone guy. But I just think that size is unique. You never know what can happen with those type of players. So that's the only opportunity cost for me in that range. Kevin Winston Jr. was not in my range or vicinity to draft with the pick 82. I know a lot of people are saying the whole in previous drafts, or if he was healthy, he would have been selected higher. I do agree if he was healthy in this particular draft, he would be drafted higher. And I do agree that in previous drafts, he probably would have been drafted higher if healthy. But at the same time, I still think the skill set that he provides and then the road to get to where he needs to be to pay off the 82nd pick, or even if he was healthy, the 52nd pick, or whatever it may be, wherever he would have gone earlier. I think that skill set wise, he's gonna have to. He has a long road to pay off that draft capital, regardless of his health. So that's why he just wasn't on my radar. But I love the attitude. I think that another thing about this draft class with the Tennessee Titans is there's so much talk about, and I'm gonna timestamp this individually. There's so much talk about the Tennessee Titans went after leaders and captains, and leadership was a big, you know, theme in this draft. And I want to tell you right now that every team is trying to do that. Now, the difference is the execution. Luckily for the Titans in their position, in their draft positioning, and by the way, shout out them, and I'll probably have a different timestamp for this, but shout out them for maneuvering and getting 9 draft selections. But, you know, everybody everybody wants to do it. The Titans executed on it. But it's not as rare as the fan base may think. You go and you talk and you look at all these draft classes, everybody's talking about leadership, everybody's talking about high character. What's to be seen is them actually executing it. Like, for example, I went through my guys, and if not all my guys, most of my guys were captains too, who I would have specifically selected. So it's not as rare as you think. These are high character individuals for the most part. I know that the NFL gets a bad rap sometimes, but for the most part, these guys are high character. So I think that's somewhat overblown. Like, we got some really good guys. I think the skill set that the Tennessee Titans did, it allows for. So yeah, essentially the opportunity cost for me would have been a guy like Kaleb Johnson getting exposed to that type of running back. You never know what they can become with that size. I know playing the game personally, having a 250, 260 pound running back when I was playing football, having to practice against him and tackle him, and then obviously seeing Derrick Henry and just having that experience over time, knowing that these big backs, when it starts to get cold, you don't want to tackle them for 20 times, 25 times, 30 times in freezing cold weather. It just doesn't, it's not a recipe for success. So that would have been my opportunity cost for the Titans. I mean, obviously they're in a position to where, depending on what they would have done, I don't know. But for me, that's kind of where I was at. For me, I would have gotten a an experienced interior offensive lineman with the ability to also be a swing tackle and get some swing tackle reps as well. And you get that value in the top 100, and you just see where you go with that. And I think the Tennessee Titans signed some, I would say, some lower tier, no disrespect, lower tier offensive lineman depth during the offseason. Whereas I kind of really got some top tier guys like Matt Pryor and um, Tristan Cologne as to beef up that interior. And then I added Milam on top of that. So that's just giving the fans, right? That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to see in real time, with obviously the draft has less restrictions than free agency. All you do is call their name, and unless they don't want to play for you or there's some contract disputes, they're going to play for you. They're going to show up and play for you. So there's less dialogue about all this, and all these players are available, by the way, because I went live as the Titans are taking these players. So next player would be at the top of the fourth. The Tennessee Titans went with Chimere Dike, which was a reach for me. He was like in my wide receiver 30-ish range, in that 30 tier. So that would put him right at, being a late round guy. But he does have a unique skill set that is a speed guy. He excelled at deep crossers at Florida. And he has the chops to return as well. So I went with Chris Paul Jr., linebacker out of Ole Miss. And this is where we're going to get into the draft where, even with Milam, a lot of fans will not know these players. They probably didn't know a lot about the draft class for the Titans outside of a few guys, but they were educated by, the people that educate you guys, I guess, in this market. I also help with that. But now you get to be educated on some other guys that where you can watch their career progress through this practice of accountability. So um, Tory Horton went with the Seahawks, by the way, so you can check what he'll be doing throughout his career. Milam was actually drafted by the Jaguars, so you'll be seeing him twice a year when he gets those opportunities. And then Chris Paul Jr. was actually drafted by the LA Rams. So my thinking here was, I went very heavy with linebackers in the free agency process. And notice my dollar amounts aren't very high. My highest contract was probably, I think, ain't no probably, I think it was Justin Reed, outside of Justin Fields signing him, but Justin Reed was the highest contract, and then targeting Zadarius Smith was the next highest. So my top three contracts were Fields, Zadarius Smith, and Justin Reed. But my linebackers were pretty much very thrifty. Was able to get a thumper. Was able to get a couple of guys that could cover. And a uh, Landon Roberts, Neville Hewitt, and Oren Burks. And then I went with Chris Paul Jr. because I know that it's going to be highly competitive, and somebody's probably going to get cut. And having a young guy that's going to push those guys was very important to me, um, because I know that they were only kind of stopgap players, and I was looking forward to the future with a competent guy that was a leader of that, a leader in that Ole Miss situation after transferring from Arkansas. I think he did the best that he could in the short period of time to become a leader and really step into that defense and be productive. Undersized, which makes sense with when you compare to some of the size requirements that the Rams actually don't care as much about. Titans probably had some size requirements because he would have been the lightest linebacker on this particular team. But the guy, he has the ability to just read and react. Because of his size, he really splits blockers in half and kind of uses that shoulder to dip up under them to make plays, snuffing out runs. If he was drafted to the Titans, he would be the best cover linebacker that they would have on this team. He moves like a safety back there. I mean, here he runs a 4.6, but when it comes down to just covering tight ends and running backs on average, he's right there with them. Tough, tenacious. Um, Once again, that high character, high study, good study habits. Tennessee Titans picked Chimere Dike. I mean, like I said, he brings the speed. He brings that straight line speed. His size isn't that impressive, but that is a target that the Tennessee Titans wanted to go after. He's had some drops in the past. Nowhere that he really went, he was able to emerge as the number one. But he's carved out a role. So at that pick that early, we'll see how it plays out. The next selection, I believe the Titans went with Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas. And I've talked about him. I really like the skill set. I like the length. I like the developmental aspect of him because he can grow. He can grow into a better inline blocker. You know, but as far as a pass catcher, I mean, he doesn't drop any passes. I mean, virtually any passes. I think he had one of the top three drop rates in the country, in terms of not dropping. It just reminds me of a slightly more souped up guy that they already have in Josh Wiley. Good run after catch ability. I think run after catch was the stat. He had a low drop rate, and then he was like top three in yak for tight ends in the country. Just good size, good, good wingspan. So that's a good pick for them. But the way that I attacked uh, the tight end room was, I allowed Chig to be Chig, got some exposure to Josh Wiley, got some better depth like on the back end and guys like Tanner Hudson and stuff like that. Um, I look at that position specifically in this offense as a position that doesn't always need to be like super revamped because they don't use their tight ends as much in these Zach Taylor, Brian Callahan, even Press Taylor. Press Taylor had a guy, in Evan Ingram. I think that you could use that, but you use that position, but I don't think traditionally it's being used. So I did target Mo Alley Cox during free agency as well to be that traditional inline because when you have 11 personnel, you have one tight end, you don't want him necessarily be the H back. You want him to be on the line and also helping with pass pro, having the ability for pass pro. Mo Alley Cox is an excellent pass protector as that quote unquote sixth offensive lineman. I think he has a unique skill set himself. So when you talk about the tight end position, there's only so much you can do, and you just want to have position versatility per se. You want to have, and Callahan talks about this, and they have employed it in a different way. But it's just trying to get different types of bodies and skill sets at one said quote unquote position. Titans were Gunnar Helm. I really like him off the field. I really like how he articulates himself. I think he's a good player. I think at that value, 120 compared to what I actually did, which was safety Malachi Moore getting again at the safety position. getting long in the tooth at that position. And a lot of times, with Malachi Moore, it's just specifically, he has nickel nickelback traits as well. So then you can double him as a free safety. If you want to put him in a box a little bit, he is undersized, but he still bangs. Or you can put him at nickel. So he gives you just that DB. He's more of a DB than he is a safety or a nickel or a corner or whatever you want to call him. So just having that versatility, he was really high on my board. So I went ahead and got him. Signing someone like John Johnson the third. Um, even targeting guys like Artie Burns or Troy Hill to take the mantle at nickel, you're just giving more at bats, and that's what really good teams do. They overflood their roster and they let the best man win. And I think that's the best way to build a roster, and that's what I did with taking a guy like Malachi Moore at pick 120, just doubling down on those things. And I think it's very important. Really makes your defense formidable. When someone goes down, play rarely drops off, and you're in a position to where excuses aren't made. But I really like Gunnar Helm. Like, it's not somewhere I would go. He was my tight end 6 or 7, and at pick 120, I think you could probably get some different picks there. I think the skill set that Gunnar Helm has isn't as unique in terms of, like, could you find that week 7 in a waiver wire? Maybe. So, and this is another side note to where we can make this an individual timestamp, is that this whole perspective of the Tennessee Titans building this team, we're just, specifically drafting Gunnar Helm because you can grow up with him, to me isn't a good enough draft philosophy to build a team with, because now you're trying, like what are you, a director? Like, you're drafting players to, oh, he's gonna grow with Cam and we're gonna use this year as a learning tool or a learning process of growth for these players, and we're just gonna see where we kind of shake out after that. I just disagree with that mindset of team building. I think that every year that you should be strategically trying to build the most infallible roster possible to put your team in the best situation to make the playoffs, beat teams in the playoffs, get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. Regardless of if you were 0-17 or if you're 3-14, you are trying to win the Super Bowl every year. Now, that does not mean that you're trading away your future, you're mortgaging your future to try to do that, but you're trying to actually add difference makers. And to them, if in their mind, if they think the draft that they just had is trying to do that, then that's them. But if they did it with the mindset of, oh yeah, he's gonna be something special in 2 or 3 years, and we're just really taking it slow, and we're really just buying into the development, and he's gonna be a good tight end 28 in the next couple years, or a tight end 16 collectively in the league in the next couple of years. I don't agree with that mindset. Like, we just got a good tight end. We like the character and he does just enough. I don't like that mindset. I like the mindset, if you think Gunnar Helm is the next Travis Kelce, that's the type of, like, buy-in at pick 120 that I need closer to. Now, obviously, Travis Kelce is Hall of Famer, right? But I'm talking about, like, you better think that he's like Mark Andrews, at least like that level at that pick, because it's like you could have gotten, something that's more like, to me, I think in the future you could see a role where Malachi Moore is a high end nickel, um, mid tier nickel, and he's really giving you great reps on a very important part of the game, which is defense, and a very important position, which is nickel, or filling in at free safety. The scenarios in which Gunnar Helm makes a great difference is if he's scoring touchdowns in the red zone and getting first downs. That is a good role. Don't get me wrong, but it's like you have players already there that has proven that they can do it. Chig Okonkwo is one of them. So you see where I'm getting at it. So next pick, let's move on. Pick 136. Tennessee Titans went with Elic Ayomanor out of Stanford. By the way, Gunnar Helm was drafted out of Texas. In case I'm skipping over the schools that they're coming from. Chimere Dike was out of Florida. Um, I mean, with that pick, you get my wide receiver 11. And I'm this is the pick other than Cam Ward that I'm right there with them. Like I almost went with it as well. I went ahead and got a player that I had ranked slightly ahead just based off of pure production, and that was Xavier Restrepo at pick 136 overall. And another example of a lot of people were gonna that they're gonna say holy overdraft, right? They're gonna say, wow, the Titans got him undrafted. They essentially finessed the situation. Whereas for me, it's like, who do you give more credence to? The person that, had the cojones to pick him at 136, or, who was willing to risk, Xavier Restrepo getting drafted by another team or signing post draft. I think a lot of people give too much credence to that being like a 100% thing for Restrepo. Restrepo, I think that there's an opportunity for him to go to other places, obviously because of the draft, and then post draft, I think there's opportunity. But for him, yes, it makes sense that he made the decision. I think he made the best decision. And for me, Restrepo was slightly ahead of Ayomanor because I think um, the skill set in a vacuum is a little bit more translatable. On average, I think the skill set to find, to be that inside slot guy and find voids and zones can get you on the field faster than competing with vets at X. Now, obviously, we all have now the visual of Elic Ayomanor playing X and all the accolades that he's gotten through mini camp, OTAs, and stuff like that. But for me, they were right there, 10 and 11, whatever. So that's the other pick that I probably would have went with myself to some degree if I had ever pivoted off of Xavier Restrepo. But I wouldn't do that. I think, like I said, Iron Manor can play at X. He's strong, physical, has that sneaky speed, that sneaky burst to separate. A lot of people bring up the game versus Travis Hunter, where I think it's just to me it's over talked about and overrated. I think that a lot of that is about his ball tracking ability rather than him just 100 and his strength, by the way, rather than him just 100% routing up Travis Hunter. I think Travis Hunter it exposed his strength more than anything, like physical strength. But it also showed Ayomanor's strength. So he's a very physical player. I think that he can be. I think he can put up Nick Westbrook Akine numbers, and I'm thinking this previous season. I think he can put up those numbers year one. He might not have as many touchdowns, but I think he can put up those numbers year one at least. And then with Restrepo, it's more so about just being a ball player. And I think a lot of people shortchange his utility. I think, he obviously has chops on special teams, not a great amount of volume. Super tough, just super natural on the inside, finding voids. He has a comparable drop rate, low drop rate, just like a Gunnar Helm. He doesn't drop much. He's just a football player. You watch him play, it inspires you and really makes you relive those good moments about football because of the way that he plays. He plays the game the right way. But I think there's another position that outside of returner, and that's punt and kick for Restrepo, that I think that I would be creative in using him, and that would be at running back as well as a Rex Burkhead type of player. He already has the build, and just finding plays or finding areas for him to produce. I think that's what a good coach does. I think that's how a good GM thinks, and I think that's what he could provide. So my personal opportunity cost was Elic Ayomanor. For the Titans, their personal opportunity cost was I don't know at that point, but mine is the player that they selected, and they ended up got him, and they're all on the same team now. So it's like it happened anyway. So it is what it is. But in my reality, I wouldn't have gotten to get to Alec Ayomanor, but I do have a player at the end that I'll share that I would have targeted in the undrafted free agent pool that I think that I don't know if he's going to be as good as Elic Ayomanor, I find solace in the fact that he had a productive college career, and I think that with coaching he could be a solid player in some league. Anyway, um, And then with the next pick, the Tennessee Titans, I think they targeted, what was it, Jackson Slater, right? They went ahead and got him from Sacramento State. Um, and for them, I think another interior guy to try to reinforce. I don't think that these guys are world beaters that they've been getting, other than Kevin Zeitler. And in the run game, I don't think Kevin Zeitler is that great in pass pro. I think that you got to look at linemen as players that there's some linemen that can hold their own 100% one-on-one because they have strength, they have length, they have grip strength, they have good feet, right? And they can really hold their own with their anchor, right? And then there's linemen who they might not have those traits that I mentioned before, but they're really good in communication and keeping their head on the swivel. And I think that Kevin Zeitler as a pass protector is very much the latter in terms of he needs help. But if there's a second year JC Latham, if there's a second year JC Latham um, on his right, and then there's um, um, a Lord Cushenberry who's coming back from injury on his left, it's not the same as his previous years in Detroit. So there might be miscommunications because he's new to the squad, and then there's the fact that I don't necessarily think that he's in his prime as a pass protector. But I think in a run game, nothing will change. So the Tennessee Titans added another player in Jackson Slater, who I think can handle his own one-on-one. And I think as a communicator and as a 1 of 5 unit type of guy, he can be good as well. But then it's not like a world beater type of selection for me personally. I went ahead and got an edge rusher, my edge rusher later, um, over 100 picks again, right? Someone might say, "Are you mismanaging the draft?" No. Well, I actually would have signed 3 or 4 edge guys during the actual free agency process, so this won't be that big of a deal. So it's not necessarily me waiting and putting off a need, but I think that if you're gonna wait and draft a player, that it's probably good that you get a guy that's played in the SEC, who had 100 plus pressures in the SEC on the inside and on the outside. Then you got a guy that had a pressure rate that compares to James Pierce Jr. And then there's so many stats that mirror the top edge of the I don't want to misquote. There's so many stats that involve pressures that mirror guys like James Pierce Jr. and and there's even a stat out there that versus good offenses, he's comparable with um Abdul Carter as well. And obviously Abdul Carter got more at bats, so maybe it's less likely for his percentage to go up. But like I said, he has comparable pressure rates to some of the best edge rushers in this class. Not he's more of a finesse player at this point in a traditional even front defensive end to me. I don't see him too much dropping in coverage. Um, but yeah, he has the opportunity to get stronger, get better versus the run, get better coaching in that regard. But as a pure pass rusher, excellent arsenal of pass rush moves, really has decent flexibility, and gets after the quarterback. And that's all you can ask for as a young player. Getting on third down, sack the quarterback. That's what we need you to do, and we'll develop the rest as we move forward in your career and develop you as a more complete player. And then I think next the Tennessee Titans selected what pick are we at? If that was like 176, we're getting to those last few picks. And the Tennessee Titans selected uh I want to be thorough here. I'm not just gonna guess like these guys be guessing, giving y'all false information. Um, then the Tennessee Titans selected at pick 167 was Jackson Slater. I always get those two mixed up, 76 or 167. They went with Cal cornerback Marcus Harris, and I went with defensive back, which mainly a safety, Kitan Crawford out of Nevada. So Marcus Harris is a guy that has slot ability. I don't like him in the slot. I don't think that he has the suddenness to really perform consistently there. So I think he'll be outside corner. And I just saw someone with enough athletic traits in a class that was kind of overhyped, a little bit overhyped. But you bank on the traits that a guy like Marcus Harris has. I think he's like 4.3, 4.4 speed. Was a part of a really good defense there at Cal last year. Has decent size, more of a click and close, keep everything in front of you, and then kind of go and make the tackle. You like to see him put himself in better position to make plays on the football to turn it over as he's running with the receivers downfield. Just a position that I think he's going to be on the back end of the cornerback depth chart and probably on the practice squad. And I went ahead and got in Kitan Crawford. Once again, another defensive back. So loading up that defensive back room because I believe that the Tennessee Titans have spent poorly collectively on the back end. Safety, not as bad. Corner, I think they those two signings last year was not ideal. Newsflash, I did not guess who didn't agree with them in real time and actually has alternatives in real time that did better. In Kendall Fuller and Ronald Darby, as opposed to L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie. So there you go. That's kind of what I've done over the past 8 years, and then obviously having a 90% hit rate for all 260 picks on average. And then if your favorite GM is drafting, he's probably going to get 1 out of 7 picks correct. I've been able to triple, sometimes get 4 out of 7. So that's why if you're into accuracy and to having accountability for your team, your billion-dollar organization, paying people millions to do this kind of stuff, this is the type of information you want. So Keith Crawford is a player out of Nevada, comes from Texas, didn't get much play at Texas, transfers to Nevada, immediately becomes a leader, and just really plays fast, click and close type of guy. I don't think he's like a heat-seeking missile or anything like that, but very athletic, can cover ground. I think he does have some slot ability, not necessarily being a pure nickel corner, but if you need him in the slot and in the box covering, your slot guy. And I know that's technically a corner, but uh, I think he has the ability to do so with his athleticism. Has a 40-inch vertical, and not how much you ever some people don't care about that kind of stuff. How much that may rock your boat, who knows? But he's a super mega athlete that has special teams chops, which is another thing that I might have a separate timestamp for is the special teams chops. Like the Titans, they didn't stop making high character special teams versatile players when the Tennessee Titans started this year, guys. If you haven't noticed, there's a theme with my guys as well. That have dual threat special teams ability, whether that be as a returner or a gunner or some type of capabilities to do so. And that's including Chris Paul Jr., who I would have taken at the top of the fourth. Um, and the returner and Tory Horton got another returner coming up. So these are the players that I would have taken, and you know, and we got what, two more to go, and that's just really it. I think doubling up on that, you look at the opportunity cost for going for Keaton Crawford at that point. You look at it and you're like, okay, at that range, who would you taken? Who wouldn't you? Who wouldn't have you taken? Uh, who you wouldn't have taken? Sorry, guys, it's late. Trust. It is late. But anyway, some of the opportunity costs, like Chris Paul Jr., if I didn't mention, was Cody Simon out of Ohio State. I really liked him. Him and Paul Jr. was close for me. And then Malachi Moore, another one for me as far as opportunity cost was, in a different draft, if I didn't take Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders is still there, which is kind of crazy to me. Opportunity cost for Tyler Barron was getting a tight end like Jackson Halls, not the a receiver that Gunnar Helm is, but definitely a better blocker. I mean, the best blocking tight end in the draft, in my opinion. Uh, Opportunity costs. Yeah, so just wanted to get an update on them. And then moving forward, after Kitan Crawford, my final pick was Brashard Smith, who is pretty much a dual threat type of guy, running back. I think if the which I would, if I know Andy Reid well, he'll still have Brashard Smith flexed out in like a slot role in some plays and some packages. So I think that's pretty cool. He has the ability. So Brashard Smith, let me just paint the picture. Super fast running back who comes from Miami, who where he played predominantly at the receiver position, converted to a running back and had a stellar year. I'm talking like he was in the ranks with Scattaboo and he was in the ranks with Gene T and Marion Hampton in terms of like overall production. And then he also, excuse me, doubles, triples as a returner. So just an all-around speed guy that really changes outcomes of games when you get the football in his hands. The Tennessee Titans went ahead and drafted their running back 3 or 4, Kalel Mullings, out of Michigan, who is a linebacker that converted to a running back. And that gives them another extra edge on special teams as far as coverage goes. But, gives them a power back, right? A straight line runner that has the chops just to be physical. And then obviously the chops also to be a linebacker because that's what he did before running back. So that gives you an extra guy. Heck, I don't know if he'll be learning defense with that with so many guys competing for linebacker 2, linebacker 3, and special teams roles. But the fact of the matter is, as a special teamer in coverage, you don't have to teach him too much about being aggressive, shocking and shedding, engaging and disengaging, and making a form tackle. So I think it's one of those picks. Once again, it's like we're at a point to where okay, we can get a power back. That's something that is a need. Whereas with me in free agency, I was able to get my power back in Samaje Perine, older but fits the bill, and I think that's overrated. Like you're not drafting Kalel Mullings to put together this elaborate developmental plan that's 3 years to where he has a path to become the next Travis Henry, or the next Lamar Miller, or who's another power back from back in the day, Mike Allstott. You're not putting him on a Mike Allstott plan. So that's why I'm like, where like then you go and sign, Todd Davis Price right after, and they have similar height weights. So it's like you didn't waste a draft pick, but you drafted a power back when you could have gotten it in free agency with familiarity with Samaje Perine. The GM and the head coach had connections to Samaje Perine because Samaje Perine played for both the Bengals and the Chiefs. I think he's back on the Bengals, I believe. So that would have been my power back, been over and done with. The Titans have double dipped at that very niche role. Um, and my opportunity cost that late would be the player that I talked about is Andrew Armstrong, out of Arkansas, who big receiver, not the greatest athlete, but super dependable in that SEC conference. Limited route tree, definitely has to improve as a route runner, but in terms of just pure ability to make plays, and then has a very unique uh, yards after catch creativity at that size. Just somebody as a big size receiver. If my opportunity cost by taking Xavier Restrepo was that vast, my guy to make up for a bigger receiver, not getting Elic Ayomanor, would have been getting a guy like Andrew Armstrong. So I thought those things, I wanted to go over those things because those were important to me. I think pertinent to the situation of me just describing, like giving you guys, real time alternatives to what the Tennessee Titans actually did, and so that you have the power and that you have the ability to look back and say and know that my team did this, but oh, they could have done it and built it like this and had a better season or a better outcome. Um, Excuse me, I'm looking for some notes to make sure that I got everything that I wanted to say on this. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I always just want to give you guys value. I'm not the type of guy that's gonna come on here and just try to be like, okay, I got subscribe here, like here, like I'm just providing value. Because I'll admit, I'll be the first person to admit I am not in the service business yet to where I'm just servicing you guys and just trying to get you to buy my content. You know what I'm saying? I say I'm not in it to give you guys outlandish takes so that drive up my numbers so that I can go to sleep at night and say, well, at least I'm making money off of them. you know, there's very rarely high level content in the market that really is moving the needle, but it is providing a service. I will never take that away from the people that do what they do. They're not necessarily moving a needle. If they were hired by a team, they probably drive them into the ground, but they are providing a service, for you guys. So there's that. But yeah, I think that's really all that I wanted to hit. Anything else is, under the timestamps. I think that, there's a lot of hopium going on with people running routes versus air. Their pads aren't on. They're like nobody's hitting right now. Um, some of the things that I think will come into fruition. I think the best picks, like outright, obviously the ones that I usually agree with is good. So Cam Ward, Elic Ayomanor is the ones that I think are darn near close to 100% agreeing with in terms of who I liked and value. The other people, as far as the pure draft to who they selected, I think that these are their acquired tastes and their supposed strategy. And I think that the success of the players that they took is going to be dependent on the development through coaching, and it's going to be developed dependent on their opportunity share. So that means that like the competition in front of them, like of course, if the Titans don't sign another edge guy, Femi Oladejo is going to get a lot of at bats to just try to figure it out, right? And then hopefully the coaching catches up to that, and then he's just not out there just playing randomly, because he could be in a situation where he could be a guy that gets a lot of starts, but then he's not getting better. He's just doing the same stuff. But once again, the high character pairing with it, I think a lot of these players have the opportunity for retention to where you'll see them on a roster 2 or 3 years from now, but will they pan out to be highly productive? I'm betting on a healthy Cam Ward and a healthy Elic Ayomanor, who, by the way, also has drop issues, but and injury issues earlier in his career. But boom, But guys, I don't know if I have to say this. You're welcome. I'm pretty sure you're welcome to comment on what draft you think is better. If you even know some of the players I mentioned, but you will probably hear their names throughout the season. Brashard Smith ended up going to the Chiefs. Um, Tyler Barron went to the Jets. Malachi Moore went to the Jets. Kitan Crawford went to the Cardinals. Um, Xavier Restrepo, Titans, of course. Um, Chris Paul Jr. already told you he went to the Rams. Wyatt Milum, Jaguars. Tory Horton, Seahawks. Cam Ward, Titans. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully I covered everything I wanted to. It's been eventful. I think I had to pause it one time, and I think something flew by my glasses and another time. So hopefully you've enjoyed it and it's digestible. But this is my practice of accountability, and I will see you on the next one.